Hello, a while ago I put Norse myths and moments into an AI writing generator, and here's the results. I styled it after the chapter in the Prose Edda called the Gylfaginning. The Prose Edda was a book written in the 1200s by the Icelandic poet Snorri Sturluson. It is one of the first books on Norse mythology, the mythology that characters like Thor and Odin come from. The Gylfaginning. King Gylf of Midgard, realm of the humans, eagerly set out on a journey to Asgard, land of the Aesir gods. His heart beat with excitement and anticipation as he traveled through the barren mountains and crossed treacherous rivers. As he arrived at the gates of Asgard, he was greeted by Heimdall, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge. "Halt! Who goes there?" Heimdall said. "I am King Gylf of Midgard. I come to meet with Odin, king of the Aesir," Gylf replied with confidence. Heimdall nodded and opened the gate. Once inside, Gylf marveled at Asgard's beauty. He was awestruck by its towering castles and shimmering landscapes. Finally, he met Odin in his grand hall and they began to speak. "Welcome, King Gylf," Odin said with a smile. "What brings you here?" "I have come to learn about Norse mythology," Gylf replied. "Very well," Odin said warmly. "Let me tell you about our great myths and legends." And so began their conversation as they talked about the tales of Thor and Loki, and many other stories that had been passed down through generations. King Gylf listened carefully and with growing fascination as he soaked in every word that Odin spoke. As night fell around them, their conversation ended, but King Gylf knew that his journey had only just begun. There were endless stories yet for him to hear on this adventure in Asgard. The creation. Once upon a time, the Allfather Odin sat atop his throne in Asgard, the heavenly realm that would eventually become the home of the Aesir, the warrior gods of Norse mythology. From his lofty throne, Odin surveyed the 9 realms of Yggdrasil, the world tree, and contemplated what each realm could become. It is said that Odin struck his magical spear, Gungnir, into the land of Midgard, creating a cleft from which the first of the 9 realms would form. This was the land of Niflheim, the realm of mist and fog. From there, he crafted 6 more realms for the different races of the world, each a reflection of the characteristics of the gods themselves. There was Jotunheim, the realm of giants and the home of the frost giants, Vanaheim, the realm of the Vanir gods, Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods, Alfheim, the realm of the light elves, Svartalfheim, the realm of the dark elves, and finally, Midgard, the realm of humanity. Finally, Odin crafted the highest and holiest realm, which he named Neptur after his beloved son Thor. From this place he could watch over his children and keep them safe. These 9 realms were the first creations of Odin, and formed the basis of the world of Norse mythology. Now, Odin could begin to organize and populate the realms with the many gods, monsters, and creatures of mythology. As he populated these realms, Odin realized the great potential that he had created, and from that moment forward these 9 realms of Norse mythology were set in stone. Asgard. Asgard was an eternal realm in Norse mythology, home to Odin and the other gods of the Aesir pantheon. It was a shining place full of beauty and grandeur, ruled by Odin and surrounded by an impenetrable wall. The gods lived in great palaces built from the shining metal known as Svartalfheim, which could not be damaged by any weapon. Even monsters feared to enter Asgard, such was the power of its gods. Outside the walls of Asgard lay the realms of Midgard, home of the mortals, and Jotunheim, the frozen home of the giants. Around the outer walls was the formidable Bifrost, the rainbow bridge connecting Asgard to all the other realms. Once guarded by the god Heimdall, it was a pathway that very few could enter. The gods of Asgard feasted, warred, and reveled in their realm, living out most their immortal lives and handing out justice and wisdom when needed. Many of their adventures and tales of their deeds form the basis of Norse mythology, which has been passed down through generations. Asgard was a place of awe and wonderment, a place for gods and mortals alike to explore and seek out new knowledge and experience. It has since become one of the great mythological cities of everlasting fame, entwined with the mythology of many great cultures. Dwarves. The blacksmith dwarves of Svartalheim were renowned throughout the 9 realms for their incredible craftsmanship. There were many dwarves that were known for this craftsmanship. There were the sons of Ivaldi, the dwarves that made Odin's spear Gungnir. 2 of the most famous of these dwarves were Brakra and Sindri. They were brothers, and both were masterful craftsmen in their own right. Together, they created the mighty hammer Mjolnir for the god Thor. Mjolnir was crafted from the strongest metals and enchanted with powerful magic. It was said that the hammer was so powerful that it could level mountains and crush foes with a single blow. The dwarves of Svartalheim were a proud people, and they took great pride in the work of their brothers. Their work was admired and respected throughout the 9 realms, and they were often asked to craft weapons and other items for the gods. Odin and why he is one-eyed. Long before the modern world as we know it existed, lived the god Odin, king of the Aesir gods and ruler of Asgard. Odin was the god of wisdom, knowledge, and war, and a power that could not be ignored. Odin was the son of the primeval giant Bor, and with the help of his brothers Vili and Ve he created the 9 worlds known as the realms of Norse myth. He created these realms by subjecting 9 new gods Ai and his kin. The realms included Midgard, home of the humans, as well as Asgard and Valhalla, the homes of the Aesir gods and their fellow warriors. Odin also created and shaped all the creatures in his realms, horses, birds, fish, and everything in between. He was seen as a wise and powerful ruler, possessing many magical artifacts such as his spear Gungnir, his spear of destiny, and his mighty 8-legged horse Sleipnir. He was also said to have a mysterious power of foresight, as he could look into the future and discern what would happen. His position as the ruler of the Aesir gods was not just one of power, but also one of responsibility. Odin was a protector who watched over his realm and all who lived within it. He was said to have gone on many adventures in the 9 realms, teaching the people about wisdom and victory and justice. Odin was the ultimate ruler of Asgard and the Aesir gods until his disappearance, leaving Valhalla to a new generation of gods and heroes. Though he is often forgotten or overlooked in modern society, Odin was indeed a powerful ruler and king of a legendary pantheon. A poem of Odin, written anonymously centuries ago. Odin, king of the Aesir gods. The one-eyed wanderer of old. The mighty father of Thor. His presence bold. He took the throne with wisdom. His power ran deep. He sacrificed himself for knowledge, and reaped the keep. His runic magic and symbols. His path of wit and will. His victory over the giants. An unrivaled skill. The All-Father of Asgard. His wisdom, strength, and might. His place in the pantheon. An immortal sight. Odin, king of the gods. His legacy will endure. The protector of the people. His story will endure. Odin had always been a seeker of knowledge, seeking out knowledge that could push the boundaries of his understanding. So when he heard of Mimir's well, a source of vast and untold wisdom, he was desperate to drink of its waters and gain the knowledge it contained. But Mimir had placed a heavy price on such knowledge. To gain entrance to his well, Odin was told that he must give up one of his eyes as the price of entry. Initially, the price seemed too high to pay, but Odin's thirst for knowledge was too great. He was willing to give anything to gain the wisdom he sought. With a heavy heart and a silent acceptance, Odin plucked out one of his eyes and cast it into the bottomless depths of Mimir's well. There was a moment of unbearable pain and then a flash of light. When Odin emerged from the darkness, he had gained a knowledge and understanding that was far beyond what a mere mortal could ever hope to gain, and his eye had been replaced with a powerful and all-seeing eye. Every day, Odin would come to Mimir's well to dip into its waters and gain insight into both the past and the future. Despite the cost, Odin was eternally grateful to Mimir for granting him the gateway to such vast amounts of knowledge. Thor. Thor was an Aesir god of thunder and the son of Odin, the chief god of the Asgardian pantheon. He was the mightiest of the gods and the strongest warrior, renowned for his bravery and strength. Thor was often portrayed as a boisterous, passionate god who enjoyed a good laugh and a strong drink. He was known for his great hammer Mjolnir, which had the power to control the elements of thunder and lightning. In addition to his hammer, Thor was also often seen wearing an enchanted belt called Mekkingjord, which doubled his strength and enabled him to lift his hammer with ease. As a warrior god, Thor was a protector of the Aesir and a dutiful ally to his father Odin. It was he who defended Asgard, the stronghold of the gods, against the frost giants, trolls and other monstrous entities. He was also the champion of humankind, protecting them from dangers they could not face on their own. Although Thor was a powerful god, his pride sometimes got the better of him and caused him to make rash decisions. But his strength, courage, and loyalty to his family and to the gods were never in doubt. A true champion of Asgard, Thor was the quintessential Aesir hero. A poem of Thor, written anonymously centuries ago. Thor, a god of strength and thunder. His hammer, Mjolnir, could make the heavens wonder. It was said his hammer could level mountains high. Lightning and thunder he could control with a cry. He fought against giants and creatures of the night. His hammer would crash down with an almighty might. And when battles were won and peace had returned, Thor's hammer was a reminder of his strength it had earned. To help him swiftly travel through the 9 realms, he had a special chariot he called the Goats of Thunder. This powerful chariot was pulled by 2 goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjostr. These 2 goats had the strength of an ox and agility of a deer, allowing Thor to travel great distances with remarkable speed. The goats' hooves clattered along the ground as they raced through the air, and Thor felt the power of his chariot surge through him and the land below. The goats were able to command their way through any obstacle, even obstacles as imposing as mountains, rivers, and even dark forests. In dark skies, their horns illuminated a path for Thor to follow to his destination. The Goats of Thunder were reliable companions on Thor's journeys and were greatly venerated by the people of Asgard. Thor would use his chariot to bring hope and justice to those in need and to those who had done wrong. The Goats of Thunder were the lightning of the gods and their thunder the avenging of justice. Thor would often ride his powerful chariot in chariot races and would come out victorious every time with the help of his loyal goats. With the Goats of Thunder, Thor is able to traverse the 9 realms, pressing ever onward towards his goals, a hero to the people of Asgard. Mjolnir was the legendary hammer of the great Norse god, Thor. It was said to be crafted by 2 dwarves, Brokr and Sindri, in the realm of Svartalheim. The 2 dwarves were said to be the most skilled craftsmen of their time and were chosen by Odin himself to make the hammer. The hammer was made of the strongest metal known to man, Uru, and was said to be so powerful that it could level mountains with a single strike. It was said to have been imbued with magical powers. The hammer was also said to be able to summon lightning and thunder and to have the ability to fly back to Thor's hand after being thrown. When the hammer was finished, Thor was presented with it by his half-brother, Loki. Thor was so pleased with the power of Mjolnir that he declared it to be his most prized possession and kept it with him at all times. Throughout his many adventures, Thor used Mjolnir to protect those he loved and fought for justice against the forces of evil. Even today, Mjolnir is still seen as a symbol of power and strength, and is often used in popular culture to represent justice and honor. Baldur. Baldur was an Aesir god, the beautiful and beloved son of Odin and Frigg. He was Thor's younger brother, and was renowned for his good looks, intelligence, and generosity. He was beloved by all the gods, especially his mother, and was often seen as a symbol of peace and light in the world of the gods. One day, Baldur had a dream in which his own death was foretold. Frigg was so distressed by this that she decided to make sure nothing could ever harm her son. She made every living thing swear an oath that they would never harm Baldur. and for a time it seemed as though Baldur would be safe from harm. But Frigg had made one mistake. She had not consulted Loki, the trickster god, when she made her oath. Loki was angry that he had been overlooked and decided to take his revenge. He grabbed his dagger and killed Baldur with it. The death of Baldur was a tragedy for the gods and for the world. It was seen as a sign of the coming darkness, and the start of the events of Ragnarok. The gods were filled with grief, and the world seemed to grow darker in their sorrow. The death of Baldur had set in motion events that would lead to the destruction of the gods and the world. Freyr and Freyja. Freyr was an Aesir god of hunting, known for his strength and bravery. He was said to be the son of the god Njord, and the brother of the goddess Freyja. Freyr was an important member of the Aesir gods, and was often seen as the protector of the gods. He was known for his great skill in battle, and his ability to control animals. Freyr was said to have a magical spear that could never miss its mark, and a chariot pulled by the two boars Gullinbursti and Slidrug Tani. One day, Freyr received a dire warning from Odin, the Allfather. Surtur, the leader of the fire giants, was planning to bring about Ragnarok, the doom of the gods. Freyr was determined to prevent this, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. He set off with a small group of warriors to confront the fire giant and put an end to his plans. After a long and fierce battle, Freyr was defeated. He had fought bravely, but in the end, he was no match for Surtur's overwhelming power. He died, but not before he had done enough to prevent the destruction of Asgard from happening. Though Freyr was gone, his memory was remembered by the gods and his bravery was never forgotten. He will always be remembered as the Aesir god of hunting who died trying to stop Surtur and Ragnarok. Freyja, the beloved goddess of love, fertility, beauty, and fine material possessions, was the daughter of the god Njord and sister of the god Freyr, ruler of the Norse pantheon. Freyja, who was also known as Vanadis, was a powerful and wise goddess. She was said to be one of the most powerful goddesses in the Norse pantheon. Freyja was known for her beauty and her ability to seduce men and gods alike. She was also a great warrior and could ride into battle on her chariot pulled by cats. Freyja had a magical necklace called Brissing Amen which was said to give her great powers. She also owned a cloak of falcon feathers that allowed her to shapeshift into a falcon. Freyja was a goddess of love and passion, but she was also a goddess of fertility, beauty, and material possessions. Freyja was also a goddess of war, a fact that was often overlooked. She was said to have led the Valkyries into battle and was believed to have been the one who determined who would live and who would die in battle. Freyja was a beloved goddess among the Norse people and she was revered for her power and beauty. Her legacy continues to live on in the stories, myths, and legends of the Norse people. Tyr. Tyr was a god of strength, courage, and justice for the Norse Aesir. He was known to his people as the god of war, and was the most honored of all the gods. Tyr was brave and fearless. He was a great leader in battle and was respected by his people. He was often seen on the battlefield, inspiring his warriors and leading them to victory. Tyr was also a god of justice. He was the one who held the scales of justice, and he was the judge of disputes. He was known for his fairness and wisdom. Tyr was not only a god of war and justice, but he also possessed a great deal of strength. He was known to be able to lift enormous objects, and was said to be able to break chains with his bare hands. Tyr was seen as a symbol of strength and courage by his people. His bravery and strength were admired by all, and it was said that his presence on the battlefield was enough to make his enemies flee in terror. Tyr was a beloved god of the Norse Aesir, and his legacy lives on to this day. He is still remembered and honored by those who believe in the power of strength, courage, and justice. Loki. Loki had been adopted by the Aesir gods when he was just a baby, a foundling left in a basket for Odin and Frigga to find. Yesterday's child, without a home or family to call his own. Aesir god of trickery, adopted brother of Thor, adopted son of Odin, and biological son of Laufey, king of the frost giants, Loki grew up believing he was no different than any other Asgardian. He had never known his true parentage and, like all adopted brothers, shared a bond with Thor as close as any true bondsman. When Loki was a young man, he was drawn to illusory magic, and skilled in the art of deception, causing a great disruption to the court of the Aesir. Odin had long sensed the trouble Loki could create, but, being a father, he could not bring himself to deny Loki's gifts or kick him out of the court. Events reached a boiling point when Laufey, Loki's birth father, king of the frost giants, appeared in Asgard to remind Loki of his true origin. In a mob full of hatred, Loki and Laufey were fought off and sent back to Jotunheim, Laufey cursing Odin with a youth-taking, life-debilitating wish. Back in Jotunheim, Loki finally, at long last, got to know the father he never wanted. He learned of rage and anger, deceit and deception, and saw the path that could have been his destiny had he been born a frost giant. In a display of mercy, Laufey allowed Loki to choose his own fate, and thus Loki returned to Asgard. From then on, Loki was viewed in an entirely different light by the Aesir. He had seen the depths that lay beyond their walls, the fire and frost that created the universe, and was respected for the power and knowledge he gained from the experience. Loki many times bordered on the edge of disrupting their realities, but instead chose to use his gifts to aid the Aesir. Loki, in his lifetime, had left every slot he was given, trickster, brother, son, and frost giant, with a lasting impression. His strength of character and will left a lasting imprint within his world, one remembered in song and lore until the end of days. Loki's children. Fenrir. Fenrir was the wolf son of Loki, the trickster god of Norse mythology. He was feared by all the gods and goddesses for his immense size and strength. Fenrir had been born from a union between Loki and a giantess. He was born with an immense appetite, so much so that he was soon too large for even his parents to handle. Seeing the danger in this, the gods and goddesses of Asgard decided that Fenrir must be chained. Fenrir was chained to a rock with a magical chain that could not be broken by any force, no matter how strong. The gods and goddesses thought they had contained the wolf, but they were wrong. Fenrir's hatred of the gods and goddesses only grew as time went on. His hatred eventually led him to be the one to kill Odin at Ragnarok, the end of the world. Fenrir would prove to be Odin's undoing at the final battle, as his sheer strength and size would prove too much for Odin to handle. At Ragnarok, Fenrir would finally be freed from his shackles, and his freedom would be the end of Odin and the end of Asgard. Fenrir would be remembered as the wolf that killed Odin, but Odin's son Vidar avenges Odin by killing Fenrir. Jormungandr. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, was a giant serpent who was large enough to wrap around the realm of Midgard and bite his own tail. He was the son of the trickster god Loki, and was known for being a fierce fighter. Jormungandr was feared and respected by many, as his size and strength were immense. He was said to have been so large that he could reach from one end of Midgard to the other. He was a fierce creature and was known for his strength and ferocity. When the gods of Asgard declared Ragnarok, Jormungandr was determined to fight against Thor, the god of thunder. In the battle, Jormungandr and Thor faced off, and in the end, Thor was victorious. Jormungandr was defeated and killed by Thor, and his body was cast into the sea. Jormungandr was a feared and powerful creature, and his death was a major event in Norse mythology. He will forever be remembered as the Midgard serpent who was large enough to wrap around the realm of Midgard and bite his own tail. Hel. Hel was born to the trickster god Loki and his giantess wife Angrboda. Her siblings were Fenrir, the great wolf, and Jormungandr, the world-encircling serpent. As a child, Hel was beautiful and wise beyond her years, yet she was also feared and shunned by the other gods due to her being a daughter of Loki. When she was old enough to understand, her father told her of the prophecy that foretold of her being sent to the realm of the dead, known as Hel, and being made the ruler there. Hel was filled with dread at the thought of being banished and confined to the underworld, but she still remained loyal to her father and accepted her fate. Odin, the king of the gods, had no choice but to carry out the prophecy and banish Hel to hell. He gave her authority over the dead and instructed her to rule over them as she saw fit. Despite her reluctance, Hel accepted her role and set about establishing her kingdom. She built a palace for herself and set up laws to govern the dead. Hel was both feared and respected by the dead. She was known for her strict judgment and her fairness when it came to deciding the fate of the souls in her realm. She was also known for her mercy and compassion, especially towards those who had been wronged in life. Although Hel was a powerful ruler, she was still lonely in her realm. As a result, she became increasingly bitter and resentful towards her father and the other gods for banishing her to the underworld. Despite her resentment, she continued to faithfully carry out her duties as the ruler of the dead. Hel remained in her kingdom for centuries, faithfully ruling over the dead and ensuring that justice was done. She was eventually released from her confinement by Odin, who praised her for her loyalty and compassion. To this day, Hel is remembered as one of the most powerful and respected rulers of the underworld. The binding of Fenrir. The Aesir gods were powerful and wise, but even they could not ignore the prophecy made by the great seer Valva, who had spoken of a great destruction that would consume the gods, a doomsday called Ragnarok. For the prophecy to come true, the wolf Fenrir, the son of the trickster god Loki, would have to remain chained and tied to a rock with a magical chain made of the sound of birds singing, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the beard of a woman, and the sinews of a bear. But the gods knew that Fenrir was too powerful to remain chained forever, and so they called upon the god of trickery and cunning, Odin, to come up with a way to bind the wolf. Odin and his sons Thor, Baldur, and Tyr worked together to construct a chain made of these magical materials that could hold the mighty beast until Ragnarok arrived. When they finished, Odin cast the chain upon Fenrir, who, not expecting such a powerful chain, was caught off guard. His strength couldn't break free from the chain and he was tied to a large rock, known as Gyl, in the bowels of a cave beneath the earth. Fenrir remained imprisoned until the battle of Ragnarok comes, when he will be unleashed to bring destruction and chaos all over the 9 worlds. And so it was that Fenrir, the son of Loki, was tied to a rock in a deep cave waiting for the coming of Ragnarok. He was bound with a magical chain and would remain there until the fate of all gods, giants, and men was decided in Ragnarok. How the Midgard serpent became the Midgard serpent. When Jormungandr was born, his father, Loki, was both exhilarated and terrified. Jormungandr was the most beautiful and powerful son Loki had ever seen, with strong limbs and a snake-like body. Loki was aware of the prophecy about Jormungandr. He would grow to become the Midgard serpent, a monstrous beast that encircles the entire world. Distraught, Loki beseeched the gods to spare Jormungandr. The gods refused and instead tasked Loki with the burden of raising Jormungandr as his own. Jormungandr was taken to the depths of the sea, where he was to live in obscurity away from the eyes of the gods. Though isolated from the world, Jormungandr flourished under the watchful eye of his father. He grew rapidly and became a creature of immense size and power. Loki realized that the prophecy was coming true and that Jormungandr would need to be released to fulfill his destiny. On the day of his release, Loki said his farewells to Jormungandr and cast him out into the ocean, not knowing if he would ever return. Once Jormungandr entered the sea, he began to grow. His body grew bigger and bigger, encircling the world and becoming the Midgard serpent that the prophecy foretold. He created an image of himself on the horizon where he never seemed to end, and his coils are said to be so long that he can grasp the tail in his mouth. From that day onward, Jormungandr became known as the Midgard serpent, and Loki watched proudly from afar. Valhalla. Valhalla was the hall of the slain in Norse mythology, where the honored souls who had died in battle were received. It was said to be located in Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods. The souls would be greeted by the god Odin, the god of war and wisdom, and his 2 wolves, Freki and Jerry. Odin would welcome the fallen warriors and escort them to the great feast table in Valhalla, while Odin's Valkyries served and attended to their every need. The great hall was filled with shield-clad warriors and loud voices in celebration, and was often referred to as the Hall of Heroes. The heroic dead were honored with endless feasts and endless battles. At the end of the Ragnarok, the epic Norse battle between the gods and their enemies, Valhalla was destroyed. It is said that the souls of the fallen warriors continued to exist in a special part of the heavens, where they feasted and fought in eternal happiness. While Valhalla has become popular in modern culture, it continues to be an important part of Norse mythology which has stood the test of time. It serves as a reminder to honor the memories of courageous warriors and their heroic feats in life and death. The building of Asgard's wall and Sleipnir's birth. Asgard was under attack by a mighty rock giant. The giant had been terrorizing the land for days, crushing everything in its path. The Aesir were in a state of panic, fearing for their lives. Just as all hope seemed lost, Thor appeared on the scene. The god of thunder was determined to save his people and defeat the giant. With his hammer Mjolnir in hand, he charged towards the giant. The battle was fierce, with the giant using his strength to try and overpower Thor. The Aesir watched in awe as Thor fought valiantly, his every strike thundering through the air. The giant was no match for Thor's might. But in a moment of distraction, the giant hurled a massive rock at Thor. The rock struck Thor's head with a sickening thud. The Aesir gasped in horror as their hero fell to the ground. For a moment, it seemed as if all was lost. But then, to their amazement, Thor rose back up to his feet. With an even greater fury, he charged towards the giant once again, striking with all his might. In the end, Thor emerged victorious. The gods of Asgard looked up at their leader, Odin, waiting for him to explain the wall being built around their kingdom. Odin looked down at his people and began to speak. This wall is being built to keep us safe from the giants who constantly threaten us. Hearing this, Loki sneered and said, "That's absurd. Walls won't keep us safe." Odin gave him a stern look and replied, "We have been warned that the giants will attack. This wall is our only defense." As they all worked on building the wall, Loki decided to play a trick on Odin. He transformed into a mare and led a giant stallion named Svadilfari into Asgard. The stallion did more work in one night than all of the gods combined had done previously. When Odin discovered what had happened, he was furious with Loki. But out of that union came Sleipnir, a magnificent horse with 8 legs. Odin looked upon his new steed and smiled. Although chaos may come from unpredictable circumstances, he said, there will always be unexpected blessings. And with that, he rode off on Sleipnir into the distance. Thor's failure. Once upon a time, Thor and his trickster brother Loki decided to embark upon a daring adventure into the land of Jotunheimen. Jotunheimen was a mythical realm where giants roamed and very few mortals had ever ventured. Thor and Loki were determined to venture through the mysterious realm and soon embarked upon their thrilling journey. At first, it was intimidating as they carefully moved through the giant pine trees, but soon their fear subsided as they continued on their journey. As they ventured deeper into the realm, they found themselves surrounded by majestic mountains and enormous waterfalls. The air was thick with the smell of pine and each turn revealed a new wonder. Everywhere they looked they were amazed. Soon they arrived at a beautiful lake, looking much like an emerald set in a diamond. The lake was so deep that their reflections seemed to touch the water's surface. Thor and Loki decided to explore the realm's shore, and were stunned to find tucked into a sheltered cove was a ring of Jotuns, giants, who were singing and dancing. The giants welcomed Thor and Loki and explained that they would never be out of luck while visiting their realm. The giants were hospitable and shared their stories and offered the brothers some of their food, but warned them of the dangers should they venture too far into the realm. Thor and Loki thanked the giants, and it was with a heavy heart that they bid their farewell to the mythical realm, a rare experience that both would never forget. Whilst they ventured back, they were met by a giant king named Utgard Loki. Thor and Loki had their courage tested when the giant king in Jotunheimen challenged them to a strength contest. He declared that whoever could lift a giant house cat off the ground would win the challenge. Thor and Loki took the challenge without hesitation. They each grabbed the fur of the massive creature and pulled with all their might, their muscles bulging and straining. But the cat wouldn't budge. The king then told them the truth: the giant house cat was actually the Midgard serpent in disguise. The wily creature had tricked Thor and Loki, and now the brothers had failed the challenge. But despite their disappointment, the giant king granted them a reprieve. He praised their courage for not backing down and gave them a special token of remembrance for their courage, a stone carved with the image of a giant house cat. The king explained to them that it was a symbol of strength and resilience, something he believed both Thor and Loki had in spades. And so, the brothers left Jotunheimen with a reminder of their courage and wisdom to take back with them to Asgard. Thor and Hymir's fishing trip. Sweat dripping from his brow, Thor marched onto the shore. In his hands he held a fishing rod and a small bait, but he was determined to use the rod to fish for something much bigger. On the shore was Hymir, the giant with whom Thor was to share his task of fishing. Thor looked into the depths of the sea, searching for some sign of the great Midgard serpent, Jormungandr. He knew that it lingered deep beneath the water, and it was said to be so large that it could wrap itself around the entire realm of humans. Thor cast his line, and waited. Seconds, minutes, and hours passed, and still no sign of Jormungandr. Thor's frustration grew, but he was determined. Suddenly, there was a tug on the line. He scrambled to pull the line in, while Hymir watched on with interest. Thor and Hymir soon became aware that the line was too heavy to pull in, and they realized that they had a bite from Jormungandr itself. When Thor pulled the line up to the surface, they gazed in awe at the giant serpent that had bit into the bait. Thor's grip on the line tightened and he prepared for the tug of war. Suddenly, Jormungandr released the bait and the mighty serpent disappeared beneath the waves. Thor and Hymir looked at each other in disbelief. Although they had failed in their quest, they realized that their adventure had brought them closer together. The two continued their expedition, never forgetting the day they encountered Jormungandr. Baldr's death. Circumstances. The Aesir gods were sure of one thing: Baldr was dead. No one could explain how it had happened, but his lifeless body had been found at the foot of Yggdrasil. The Aesir were stricken with grief and sorrow, and they could not fathom a reason why Baldr had died. What they didn't know was that Baldr had been slain by Loki, the trickster god. Loki had snuck up on Baldr while he was walking in his gardens one night and slain him with a single blow of his blade. Loki had thought that by killing Baldr, he could gain the favor of Odin and the other Aesir. But as Baldr was laid to rest, his body a testament to the treachery of Loki, the Aesir gods remained unaware of the circumstances behind his death. They had no clue that their beloved Baldr had been killed by the trickster god, so they simply grieved the loss of their friend. And only Loki knew of the truth about what had really happened that fateful night. He had gotten away with murder and he was sure that his secret would stay buried forever. Loki's tiffing. Loki had always been a troublemaker and the mischievous god of Asgard had had enough. He was so full of malicious intentions that he expressed his contempt for the other gods of the Aesir to their faces without any hesitation. "You are all fools," he said, laughing. "Too foolish to realize that I have been playing you for a fool since the beginning. You can't see how clever I am." The anger of the Aesir gods was palpable in the air around them, and Odin, the Alfather, narrowed his eyes at Loki. "What do you mean by this?" Loki cackled with laughter and said, "You don't know? I killed Baldr, your favorite son. He fell with a single blow of my dagger." All of the gods in the hall gasped in shock and horror. Loki had gone too far this time, revealing his heinous crime in front of everyone. Odin rose to his feet in a fury like Fenrir, the giant wolf, ready to devour him. "I knew you were a traitor, Loki," Odin boomed. "And now I shall make sure that you face the consequences for your treachery." This was the last time Loki ever underestimated the power of the gods. He faced their wrath. Loki's punishment. Loki's punishment for killing Baldur was severe. After the gods and goddesses of Asgard had found out that it was Loki who had killed Baldur, they condemned him and deemed him unworthy of living among them anymore. He was held in an underground prison and was shackled in a magical chains made with enchanted iron. These chains kept Loki from using any of his magic to escape. This prison had no daylight since the gods had taken away the light of the sun, moon, and stars so that he would suffer and experience his own personal darkness. Along with being held in a magical prison, the gods and goddesses also stripped Loki of his abilities and sealed away his energy so that he could not use it. They also removed his immortality and put a seal on his magical objects so that no one else could ever use them. Loki remained in this dark prison until Ragnarok. Ragnarok. Once upon a time, in the 9 realms of Norse mythology, there were many gods and goddesses, each ruling over one realm. They were busy living and enjoying life. But soon, their peace and prosperity was disturbed when a prophecy warned them of the dreaded Ragnarok, a foretold event which meant the destruction of their world. According to the prophecy, this destruction would include the death of almost all the gods. The gods disagreed on how to handle the impending disaster, some wanting to make peace with the enemy, some refusing to accept their fate. No one was willing to admit the truth. Ragnarok was inevitable, and it would bring destruction to the 9 realms. Fimbulwinter. The signs of Fimbulwinter had been incredibly clear, and yet the humans refused to acknowledge them. The long winter came and the skies were filled with dark clouds whilst the snow refused to cease. During the long nights, the stars would disappear completely behind the inky darkness and many creatures and animals went into hibernation. The humans of Midgard didn't see Fimbulwinter as a sign of something evil to come, instead they viewed it as an opportunity. Since resources were scarce and the cold weather made hunting and planting nearly impossible, many of them saw Fimbulwinter as a way to gain an advantageous position against their rivals. The battles between those who sought to gain an upper hand against the others started even before the 3rd and final winter of the Fimbulwinter arrived. There were skirmishes between warring clans, and armies of varying sizes were sent to take and hold strategic positions. With the arrival of the 3rd and final winter, the fighting intensified and soon, the whole of Midgard was embroiled in conflict. The lands were scorched and the skies were filled with the smoke and fire of battle. Fimbulwinter may have been the first part of Ragnarok of destruction, but it was certainly not the last. Odin's death at the jaw of Fenrir, and Fenrir's death. Odin, the father of the gods, had knowledge that would make most humans tremble. Even the gods knew not to cross him, unless they were his son, Loki. Loki had become consumed with power, so much so that, when Ragnarok, the end of all things, came, Odin fought him bravely until Loki called upon one of his sons, Fenrir. Fenrir, the giant wolf, fought with a ferocity that Odin was hard-pressed to contain. Odin was eventually killed by Fenrir, who, in his victory, howled to the heavens. The gods were thrown into turmoil, but only one of Odin's sons had the strength to take revenge. Vidar, the silent one and the strongest of Odin's sons, wielded his bow and arrow and dared Fenrir to fight again. This time, Fenrir was no match for Vidar, and he was slain by the strength of the god's son. In a single moment, Loki's ambitions and plans for Ragnarok were ended, and justice for the father of the gods was served. Freyr's attempt to save Asgard. Freyr, the god of hunting, had long heard the tales of Ragnarok, the end times of the gods. He had shuddered in fear as the stories were recounted, but had never believed that they would come to fruition. That is, until he heard that the Fire King of Muspelheim, Surtur, was going to lead his minions to the gates of Asgard to raze it to the ground. Freyr had never imagined that such evil could take root in this realm, and thus, he was determined to stop it. With grim determination, Freyr rode out to Muspelheim in a chariot drawn by a stag, and vowed that he would protect Asgard at all costs. He arrived to find the menacing Surtur already on the march, his minions of fire already raining destruction upon Asgard. Freyr and his companions fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed and had no chance against the might of the fiery king. In what seemed was a sure death, Freyr gave one final arrow. His last words were of his love for Asgard and his failure to protect it. The arrow flew towards the heart of Surtur, but the king merely laughed and waved his hand, and the arrow dissipated into nothingness. Faced with a cruel and unfaltering enemy, Freyr, god of hunting and protector of Asgard, fell in the final embrace of Ragnarok. In his death, he was remembered fondly by everyone, as he had put his life on the line to save theirs. Freyr's legacy of courage, bravery, and self-sacrifice would remain for eternity, as would the memory of the great Fire King of Muspelheim, Surtur. Thor and Jörmungandr's duel at Ragnarok. Once upon a time there was a thunder god called Thor. Thor was feared and respected by all as he was one of the strongest gods in all the 9 realms. One day, Thor was faced with his most fierce opponent yet. In the far reaches of Asgard, deep in the realm's darkest depths, the world serpent Jormungandr waited. Jormungandr the Midgard serpent was the fiercest creature Thor had ever faced. Thor quickly realized that he would be facing one of the greatest beasts of all time and readied himself for battle. He made sure his hammer Mjolnir was at his side and also enchanted a powerful magic ring with protection. The battle began. Thor and Jormungandr exchanged blows and exchanged fire. Sparks lit up the sky as they parried and countered each other. But neither seemed to make any progress against the other, and it soon became clear that the match would be decided on one final blow. After what seemed like an eternity, Thor finally made a decisive strike with Mjolnir, the legendary hammer. The force of Thor's strike shook the entire realm, and Jormungandr was sent into the eternal depths of the sea. Thor rejoiced at his victory, as his victory at Ragnarok showed the world that he was one of the mightiest of gods. Even though Thor was no longer feared in the same way as before, his fight with Jormungandr was one for the ages. Heimdall and Loki's duel at Ragnarok. The end of the world has arrived. The dark days of Ragnarok have come, and all of Asgard stands on the brink of destruction. In a fateful confrontation, Heimdall and Loki, lifelong rivals, come face to face for the final battle. The gods watch from the sidelines as Heimdall and Loki battle it out, their weapons clashing in a storm of sparks and light. Heimdall is a fierce warrior, determined and powerful in the face of Loki's cunning and malicious tricks. The two of them fight fiercely and ferociously, neither showing any sign of backing down. But in the end, despite their effort, neither one is able to gain an advantage. The conflict comes to a sudden and unexpected end when both Heimdall and Loki are killed in the same moment, their blades piercing each other's hearts. As the gods look on in shock and sadness, the death of Heimdall and Loki signals the end of Ragnarok. The gods return to the kingdoms of Asgard to restore what has been lost, but the memories of Heimdall and Loki will never be forgotten. Though they were brothers in arms, they ultimately died together in a fight to the finish. Ragnarok, the great battle of the gods, will forever be associated with the fateful ending of two worthy opponents. In the end, the battle saw the near total destruction of the entire 9 realms. Most of the gods perished in the battle, but a few managed to survive. These survivors included Thor and his brother Baldur, both of whom vowed to rebuild their world. But first, the cycle of life and death had to play out, as it did in Norse mythology. The earth might be rocky and scorched for months after the battle, but eventually, new life emerged as the world slowly recovered from the destruction of Ragnarok. The gods worked diligently to rebuild the 9 realms, and when they were finished, the old gods were replaced by new ones, which meant that the cycle of life and death could continue to cycle the 9 realms of Norse mythology, even after Ragnarok. Though the destruction of Ragnarok was tragic, the gods believed that the promise and hope of rebirth after death was the only way to maintain life, and thus they worked to ensure a safe and prosperous future for their people. Thor's son's new role. The sound of thunder echoed throughout the empty halls of Asgard as Thor approached his sons, Magni and Modi. "Boys," he began. "The time has come for me to pass on Mjolnir." Magni and Modi's eyes widened in shock as they realized what their father was saying. "But father," Magni interrupted, "Mjolnir is the symbol of your power. Why would you give it to us?" "Mjolnir is not just a symbol of my power," Thor replied. "It represents hope and protection for all the realms. That is why I want you two to have it, to protect what is left after Ragnarok." Tears welled up in their eyes as they accepted Mjolnir from their father. With little hope left, the last remaining Aesir gods traveled through the realms, using all their strength to rebuild what was once lost. As they worked tirelessly together, they looked up at a glowing beam of light shooting through Yggdrasil, signifying a new dawn. The gods bowed their heads in gratitude as they looked at each other, thankful for this new beginning. "Through destruction comes new life," Hermund said with a smile. "And as long as we stand together, we can rebuild anything that is lost," Freya added. With renewed hope in their hearts and Mjolnir held high, Magni and Modi pledged to protect these realms with every ounce of strength they had left. And that was the video. Again, this is written by AI, so not everything is accurate. It is again meant to be like the Gylfaginning, the chapter found in the Prose Edda. Next time I do something like this, it will be based on the chapter called Skaparmal.